Hello, welcome. This is Shannon Elizabeth Eastman, and I'm back for another conversation on the Work That Matters show. We are joined today by Zoe Cunningham. I met her first about 10 years ago. Let's go with 8, sounds better. In London, at her offices over in SoftWire. We know some of the same cool people. Special mention to Jelaine Chen, one of the most incredible businesswomen I've come across in decades. And that's how I got to bump into Zoe all those years back. Zoe joins me today for a conversation about lack dressed up as ambition. And when I heard her say that last week in a separate conversation altogether, I got all excited and was like, Zoe, we need to have that conversation properly. So bless her, I invited her back and she was very good to come and have a very candid conversation about her own journey, epic journey, my goodness, her experiences and her reflections and the insights. Zoe F for Freddie, Cunningham.com is where you'll find more about Zoe, but I'd love to tell you about her. She's so interesting and maybe even paradoxical. She's a creative geek. So she's a mathematician. I would go on to say like a physicist and quantum physicist and like an algorithm writer and a coder. And I'm exaggerating, but she definitely comes from that school of super smart. And she's deeply creative, which you don't necessarily find. I mean, you can do, but in this particular expression, it's quite lovely. So she has, I think she's written 3 books now. One that I recall back in the day was training techie people and how to get the most out of them. I know that she's also done a book on the other side of her life, which is acting. So she's got an how to get started in the acting space and networking know-how. So she's really great at building community and people and relationships and leading her business and leading techie teams and acting. I believe there's a John Lewis advert. For those of you in the UK, you know exactly what I'm on about. For the rest of you, imagine Macy's, but in the UK. Is coming out with an advert that you will find Zoe in, which is very cool as well. This wisdom, insight, experience from the struggle, not necessarily from reading a textbook, but I think you'll get that impression from her in the first few minutes of this conversation. And as for all these conversations, I'll say it again, I don't imagine you're going to hear anything in here for the first time. I don't. I just know the type of audience and who you are as a listener, and you're well versed in this space. But I do believe that hearing it from different perspectives and different applications really is powerful in shifting what is possible for you. It allows you to see things maybe differently or from a different filter or lens that you need to hear right now. So it is my intention that you will enjoy this conversation. Go over to zoefcunningham.com to see more about her, keep in touch with her. She's in some movies, online movies. She calls them non-cinema movies, the other kind of movies. I can't recall the exact language, but she's great. She's really good. Go hear her stories about wanting to present the TV show. That was fun as well. She's a lot of fun and a lot of depth to her and a lot of insights and a lot of wisdom. And I'm sure you will enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. It is my pleasure to have you here, Zoe. Thank you so much for joining me. I have my first question. Tell us why this topic is so important to you. What prompted you to bring this one forward?
Questions already, like hard. We're starting with hard questions, are we? Not like, yeah. What's your name? I'm used to like going on a podcast. It's like, what's your name? What's your bio? And it's all super easy. Okay, so where did this? Well, so I don't know exactly where this came from.
You mentioned it in passing in our last conversation. You were like, oh yeah, that's lack dressed up as ambition. And I was like, ooh, that's a really important subject.
Can you remember what it was that was lack dressed up as ambition?
Well, it was in the context of a particular book you were referencing called Unstuck or Unstucked.
Mm-hmm. Unstuck Yourself by
And
Leah
we
Newman
were,
is what you mean, yeah.
yes, thank you. And we were just talking about, our history together. I think it's been 10 years since we officially waved hello. And did the different stages of that journey that we've been going through. And this place of not needing to prove anything or build empires anymore, not out of necessity anyway, but maybe as a byproduct of what other things are going on in us. That's all the context I'm going to present. Otherwise, I'll be pushing my agenda on why I love this subject.
Wow. And there's another topic, right? Accidentally pushing your own agenda. So I can definitely talk about how it showed up in my life for sure. And I think it's quite interesting that you can offer. I'd be really interested to know whether anyone listening, whether this resonates with them, because I feel that even while I was in this, I am still in this space, right? And it's possible to recognize it while still being kind of driven by it. So my career was that I went from being an ambitious but unachieving software developer, where I had grand plans. I wanted to be successful, particularly in relation to my immediate peers, which is something you see a lot, right? There's actually a lot more jealousy around people you consider to be close to you and have something you could have had. People are rarely jealous of people who are like the super rich or the super successful because it feels so unachievable, right? So my thwarted ambition was much more around my immediate peers and how they were doing and who was getting promoted and me not getting promoted and all that kind of thing. And then I had a bit of a realization about putting effort in to achieve what you wanted to achieve, and kind of trying hard, putting yourself out there, which actually is the reason I wasn't doing that up until this point, was really about a fear of vulnerability, right? It's actually very vulnerable to say, I want this and I'm going to put the effort in, not knowing if I'm going to get something back, right? It's easy to put the effort in when you know returns are guaranteed, right? It's just quantifiable.
Or take it a step further and say, it's very vulnerable to put yourself out there and ask or declare what you want when there's a possibility people are going to say no publicly, because then it's not just your personal conflict, it's now a little bit more public conflict. I've been living that myself for the last few weeks, and it is uncomfortable.
And it does drive, so those kind of things drive our behavior a lot, I think, and we're unaware of them. Although sometimes, I think I probably, if you'd said to me, I reckon you're doing this, I might have been like, oh yeah, I think you're kind of right, but whatever, I'm still not putting any effort in.
For example, I reckon, oh, sorry, I think there might be a slight delay on the call, so we'll work with it. When you say someone could come up to you and say, I think you might be doing this, do you mean, I think you might be avoiding putting yourself out there because you don't want, yes, yeah. So other people might be able to observe it in us and bring it to our attention, but we're not necessarily operating fully conscious that we are doing that or not doing that. I think that's a fair comment.
Right. Not operating consciously with it, but also perhaps not even able to escape it just by someone pointing it out to us. That was the kind of point I was getting at. So I went from that state of perhaps more obvious lack of achievement to this state of actually realizing I could set goals and I could push myself and motivate myself to achieve them. And I got into a very positive cycle of subjectively, in our standard talk, positive cycle of setting goals and pushing myself and hitting them and setting another goal and setting another goal, until eventually I said, well, what would I really want to do? Oh, I'd like to be managing director. And I think it's quite clear that anyone whose ambition is purely around like status and title, as mine was, like that's speaking to some kind of lack, right? It's not like I want to make this beautiful statue, or I want to create an amazing home, or even I want to build a business that delivers something, right? All of those are quite creative ambitions and urges, whereas I want to be managing director, I think is obviously a very classically ambitious statement, right? And I think it's clearly driven by lack.
We had a really brief conversation before I hit record about paradox and how paradoxical most things can show up. And I want to just pull that thread into this conversation because I definitely support the paradoxical nature of things at the moment in particular. And I think if we were to look at, managing director as status, there is a place for that. And I want to use a science reference, so help me get it right. You have the particle and the antiparticle. You have matter, and then you have the meaning that we attach to matter. And I think when you show up as half or one-sided, I just want to be managing director in title, or I want to have the status so that I can appease something in me, that there's the other side missing. And in this particular example, maybe meaning or purpose or mission or service. So I think I do know some people, not necessarily myself, but I do know some people who want the status and to be in service, but because they have both sides of what could sound like a paradoxical situation, there's a symmetry or a balance there. But when they only have the status, there tends to be maybe exaggerated narcissistic tendencies, but when they only want to be in service, they tend to be more exaggerated altruistic tendencies. And neither polarized states are really that helpful for us, or the world for that matter. But I think there's an opportunity to invite the other side in. But then I remember your point is so relevant. Just because someone points it out to us does not necessarily mean that that's enough for us to change it or alter it, which thus is the work where we get to go inside and deal with whatever is going on in here to help us show up as a more complete person, which I appreciate. It can be terrifying to, well, everybody. So it's funny, I look back on our last 10 years and I remember meeting you. Were you already as CEO of a fast-growing tech company in London 10 years ago? Yeah.
So I became managing director in 2012, the end of 2012, but I did have about 6 months before that it was kind of in progress, and we knew I was going to be the managing director, so.
And going back to that time, were you observing yourself to be, you had just finished achieving a series of goals for yourself that you set for yourself, and then you were asking yourself at this time, what do I really want? Is that about this time frame, 2012?
Yeah, so it kind of, I created almost 2 ambition streams in parallel. So around about 2009, so as I started to have this experience where I would set myself goals and then be able to achieve them, rather than having vague dreams and ambitions, and they would just sail past me like clouds. That was kind of how I experienced life before that, I think. But yeah, feeling everything is much more concrete and something I could grab onto, I started looking for other sources or just other things that I would maybe want to do and start doing them. And the kind of second track started with there's a TV show called Countdown in the UK where you have letter rounds. You get some letters and you have to make words from them. But then there's a special numbers round where they have a mathematician who will give you the answer at the end. So the contestants will like do their best, and then the numbers person will tell you the numbers. And they were recruiting a new numbers, so it had been the same team for like 30 years, and they were recruiting for a new numbers person. And again, the concept, I think, lack showing up as ambition to be on the TV, definitely. I feel like I'm not alone in this. I feel this is true for a lot of people. So I saw this and I thought, well, that would be amazing. I'm a mathematician. I could do that. And so, yeah, so I started down the path of looking at being a presenter and what that would mean and what I could achieve in that space.
And looking back on that moment now, given where you are in this particular point of the journey and all the work and all the mentors and all the material that you've acquired along the way, looking back then, what was driving it? The lack. What was driving the lack that was going on in your life at that time? Was it just didn't know? Was it lack of experiences to help you figure out what you really wanted? Or was it something else?
Wow, this has got really deep. This is like, you didn't tell me this is going to be like a free therapy session. So okay, this is my working theory, right? I'm not sure we ever know these answers actually when we look at ourselves, or indeed, like even less so when we look at other people, right? But I think I disconnected from purpose very early on in my life. Like I would say not long after I joined senior school, which is age 11 in the UK. Yeah. So I think, you know, I was a child like most children, and I poodled around and did what came up for me, like you do when you're a child. And I had lots of different interests, and I did lots of different things, and none of them were very serious. I was very protected from being a driven child, which I know blights the lives of a lot of people, that they are given these impossible challenges or these ambitious challenges by their parents as a child. I was very protected from that, so I had a nice little childhood of exploring the world. But then I got to senior school, and it was just all rules and following rules, and I don't know, there wasn't a lot of joy. Like I always loved learning, but I feel like senior school was designed to suck the joy out of learning.
Yeah. We get invited to become part of the safe system. Yeah. Or whatever that is for us in that particular culture or environment, but we get invited to move with a group of people, a crowd, to do the safe things. And I can totally relate to, you know, just kind of seeing your heart song just kind of fade away into the distance, but also almost feeling like that's probably a good thing because I need to grow up now. But then as you become older, there's a meaning. You want your job to be meaningful. You want your work that you do for clients to be of some meaning to them. And so we go back looking for that meaning, wondering if it might be in this particular experience or that one. Does that sound... I guess that is my personal experience.
And I don't think this is like a particularly unusual experience, right? And my life was very shaped by the fact that I did turn out to have a talent or an ability to play the game of that society put in front of me. So actually, I did manage to achieve these meaningless goals that were put in front of me in terms of education, right? And I always wonder, like, what must that experience be like when you're put into these pointless challenges, and they're not even, and you don't even end it with success, right? You end it with like, oh, I have failed, you know. And you don't realize, I didn't realize at the time how pointless. I mean, I did, I suppose. I would have definitely, if you asked 14-year-old me, what was the point of school, I would be like, it's totally pointless. But I suppose I did have that doubt that maybe I just didn't understand the world, like you say. Maybe I was missing something about being an adult where I would understand why I had to do these pointless things.
So what was the journey like to go and, I guess, address the underlying knowing or the underlying feeling that you just wanted more rich, more meaningful to you experiences? Like, what was that like? Where did you start looking and how did it come about?
Well, I feel like I did just chase down everything that I felt an inclination towards doing.
Mm.
And that was, I had a limited success with that, I would say. So what the first thing I did was I applied for this TV show that I didn't even get an audition for. Which is fine, right? That's very, I now know that's very normal in TV. At the time I was a bit like, what? But I'm a mathematician. Why won't you audition me? And then I also, one of our friends was making a show about backgammon. So my husband and I played backgammon, which is a board game. I mean, we've always liked playing board games in general, but he got very into backgammon. So we made friends within the backgammon community. And he was making a show about a tournament called the World Series of Backgammon. So I went on as a guest, and then when it moved online, I took an opportunity. In fact, I approached him to say, could I be a presenter? So I did a little bit of presenting, and that ran for like 5 years of presenting in various ways. I ended up with a regular show on Shoreditch Radio, which was a new music show, which was a great experience, and just setting up websites so that bands could send me their songs and having this lovely community of like being the person who could say, hey, I'll play your song on the radio. So that was really awesome. And I also just did other things as well. So I can't remember exactly what happened in what order. I wrote a book about training technical people, because that was what I knew, training software developers. That was what I knew how to do. I wrote a book about that. But it was very exciting to write a book, like very short term, again, like in this sense of being able to look at something and say, oh, it would be amazing to do that, and then achieving it. That was quite useful, quite enjoyable. And then I also had this idea that setting up my own business and being the person who owned the business as well as running it would be something I would like to do. So I set up 2 businesses, one selling handbags and one selling walking guides. And these came from 2 different places. So the walking guides one was, I like walking. And it's nice to have something written down that tells you where to go. So I paid a freelancer to create some walks. They were really good, actually. I did them. They were good walks, and made a book. And then I realized about marketing books, and I just like, whoa, I'm going into this market, and this is not a business. And then the handbags one actually ran a little bit longer. Although I could see what I needed to do to make it a successful business, but it required capital investment that I wasn't prepared or possibly able to make, right? So I found a great Italian supplier of handbags that made really nice handbags that I could sell on with a markup, which is quite unusual, you think, nowadays with the internet, that people couldn't just find these bags. But they were a wholesaler, right? So for whatever reason, I could make profit on these bags, and I sold them at a local market because, again, I hired a freelancer, made a beautiful website for me, really lovely website, and then I was like, oh wait, how do I get people to visit my website? So we had a little like in real life business going of me physically selling handbags, and I was like, hold on, wait, what? This is my dream. Is now, rather than working 5 days a week as a senior executive, I'm working
I'm now working 10 days a week.
Right. I'm working an extra 1 day a week as like a retail assistant in a market, right? Is this really what I'm after? So then I paid someone else to do it, but then it became hard to make the numbers work. And I was just like, okay, all right, here's my learning, business, shut it all down.
What a great experience.
It was a great experience. Right, a great experience. And I just...
Rich insight.
Yeah, and I just don't know if you can learn this stuff. So there's so many people trying to learn from talks and other people's experiences. I just don't know if you really can learn, because again, all of the lessons that I learned, I knew already. I knew you should do some market research before you started a business. I just didn't.
And so there's a really interesting quote that talks about the synapse and the connections in the brain. And when we gather new information or have a new idea, that we can actually rewire and reprogram our neurochemistry. But because they're new connections, in order for them to remain connected and then grow into something quite cool, we need to reinforce with repetition and patterns and behavior. I'm going to say for 30 days, but I can't recall how many weeks after. And if you don't, then those synaptic connections fall away. Now, listen to this, because I also have been exploring paradox of acquiring information, going, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I just can't do it. And I say that a little bit like rolling my eyes and a bit like a dickhead, quite frankly, because I have said that for decades and not understood why. I have a much better understanding of it now. So scientists have recently determined that it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in your brain, unless it is done with physical play, in which case it takes 10 repetitions. So the acquiring of information, 400 repetitions, according to this peer-reviewed scientific article. And then when you're actually doing it, getting your hands dirty and standing at the stall with handbags talking to customers, you need 10. Because one of the things that I think is quite striking about your story is you were like, yeah, this is done. Close, as opposed to many people, and maybe myself included, who are like, oh, I can't quit, I can't fail. No, I have to keep going. And you keep this business going when you really shouldn't. But you don't have the distinction between, yeah, I haven't done my research, loved it, learned a lot, bye, versus 12 years later, your house is remortgaged and you now need to get out of it. So there's a degree of self-awareness you had in there that was like fun, love the handbags, and I'm out. Right. So the science, comparing and contrasting, the ability for you to truly understand something through acquisition of information versus how quickly you can really understand, embody, I'd use in this case, something when you physically jump into the mud and get dirty with it. So I found that really insightful.
Yeah, I have a new theory based on what you just said. So I think that we often try and learn remotely, as it were, like from books or from talks or whatever, because it avoids the emotional pain we have to go through when we fail at something. And I think actually it's this emotional pain that reinforces your learning as well, right? I got a little flash of like embarrassment recalling what a failure my businesses were. Like that knowledge is deep in me now. And I think, obviously, again, for me, this is some kind of paradox, right? That we spend so long trying to avoid pain, and yet that's what we need to go through to get to the next level.
Yes.
But also, yeah.
Now I want to go back to, I just want to slow that insight you had down. So could you say it one more time? As I was reading out the quote about the science, you said you just picked something up, which is, say it again.
Okay, so I think we try and learn by shortcuts because we're trying to avoid the emotional pain of failing. But actually, it's that emotional pain is what cements the learning. A bit more concise.
I really absolutely resonate with that. It is very uncomfortable because it goes back to your vulnerability comment in the beginning. We don't want to put ourselves out there, particularly publicly, because if it doesn't work, or if I fall off my bike, right, which I did yesterday, by the way, in front of the most beautiful man ever on the street walking, and my yoga mat, and I'm sprawled out on the street, and yeah, it was not comfortable. So we don't want to be seen outside of our perfection or our perceived coerced perfection, because it's uncomfortable. I totally get that. What was the second comment you wanted to go on to before I asked you to slow it all down?
So all I went to from there was that it's a bit of a paradox. It's not quite what I meant when I said everything is a paradox, but there is this, like, we spend so much time trying to avoid pain when
pain is the way.
Yeah, but this is the real paradox, right? We spend so much time trying to avoid pain when instead we come up with learnings like pain is the way, fundamentally as learnings and teachings so that we can use them to avoid pain, right? A different type of pain, the pain of lack of achievement and feeling lost and feeling disillusioned and disconnected, but still we're trying to avoid pain. This is what I mean by everything is a paradox.
One of my favorite teachers, what was the author of the book Unstuck?
Leah Newman.
So I've ordered the book.
Oh, cool.
It hasn't arrived yet, but I ordered it in preparation for this, knowing that it would show up after our conversation, but that's okay because we're having a round two. So one of my favorite teachers is Dr. John DeMartini. I've been a student of his since 2013, maybe, give or take 6 months. And he has this really easy, simple, but very potent statement that I've heard him make quite a number of times is, our growth, what we require to grow into the version of us that gets to be the managing director that is in service to ever increasing sizes of target markets. The growth happens at the intersection of what is challenge and support. And when we only want to have sunshine, never rain, only day, never night, I only want you to be nice to me, never mean, then we stay soft and juvenile. And when challenge shows up, we don't know what to do with it. We want to run away from it. And he's like, but if you embrace challenge, actually, Dr. DeMartini takes it a step further and says, you better choose your challenge that you want to tackle in life. Because if you don't, universe or whatever this life experience is going to feel compelled to choose for you, because you cannot avoid challenge, pain, and friction. But if you are on mission, if you're in alignment with who you be and what you do, then you will see it on the way to whatever it is that you want to achieve, never in your way. And it was, I've learned, because even then I didn't know how to do it, but I've learned how to choose my challenge now, and enjoy the feedback. Actually, I can't believe I said the word enjoy. I was just talking to someone else who kept referring to feedback. The feedback called pain? He kept referring to it as great feedback. And there was one point in the conversation where I was a bit Samuel L. Jackson. I was like, say great feedback one more time, because it's not great. It's uncomfortable and it hurts. But I do enjoy.
And the purpose of the feedback is don't do this again. If you think about the iron analogy, which is everyone's favorite analogy, right, for pain, you touch the iron, it hurts, you move your finger away. The point of that pain, the point of it is to stop you putting your finger on the iron again. But you can't learn it until you put your finger on the iron.
Is that the paradox? Or another?
I don't know if that is a paradox or actually just quite neat. I think it feels quite neat to me now. It's like, yeah, if you never put your finger on the iron, you're okay. But you can't learn to not put your finger on the iron until you do, and then
if you're not learning on that iron, and you happen to be, walking by this like pond of lava, then thinking you could be swimming in it may be an idea you'd entertain because you didn't get the earlier lessons. Something that I've been mindful of, just as you were talking about pain and the purpose of it, I'm not going to go with that because I don't know if this is a statement yet, but my experience with pain does teach me. And that doesn't mean that I never get to experience pain again. It just means the quality of pain that I'm experiencing now is just of a much more richer caliber than the ridiculous pain I was going through 5 and 10 years ago. So I'm upgrading the quality and the challenge and the things that I'm tackling now. I just want to use the word quality, or just a much richer quality today, because I've evolved through touching the iron. And so much was learned from that now I can kind of go up a quantum and say, well, now I get to learn how to jump out of a plane properly. So I get to graduate through my growth curve more efficiently. And that's important. It's the struggle. Quick metaphor. The butterfly. And I apologize, I don't know where I heard this story originally, but I love this story. So there's a little girl out in her garden and she sees a cocoon and she can see that the butterfly is getting ready to come out. It's gone through its like liquefaction process. And she really, really, really wants to see the butterfly, and she wants to help it because she can see that it's struggling. And so she goes in the house and she brings out a pair of scissors and she takes the tiniest little clip off the end of the cocoon, so at least it can push its wings out and start opening the cocoon more efficiently. And what ended up happening was the butterfly got out of the cocoon quite quickly and then dropped to the floor. And she hadn't realized that she just killed the butterfly, because the butterfly requires the process of struggle and friction and fighting to get out of the cocoon, to take all the hormones within its core and stretch it out across its butterfly wings. And without the wings being activated through the struggle of exiting the cocoon, the chrysalis, its wings won't work. And so by helping it avoid pain, she killed it.
And also, to go back to our earlier conversation, to use it as an analogy for that, the butterfly couldn't do it by watching a video talk on how to launch yourself out of your cocoon.
That is,
it had to do it, right? It had to do it.
Yeah, and it's hard and it's exhausting and muscles hurt. And there's so much sensitivity that goes with it. But I wonder if that, I'm looking back on my 10 years. I want to own this. I don't want to just make it everybody else's problem. But I wonder, I used to run from workshop to workshop to workshop to workshop. I had every book, I had every seminar, I had everything going on. And it would just, I was addicted to collecting them. I wasn't necessarily addicted to applying them. So I would tell myself that I was progressing because, I've done 27 workshops on whatever that topic was. But I'd never opened the workbook again when I left the weekend and actually do the work. And I think it was because maybe unconsciously I knew that I had to go through a cocoon, and I was just mentally, emotionally not prepared to believe in myself maybe, or think that I had what it takes to accomplish it. So therefore, just staying with the knowledge felt more, it felt productive.
Yeah.
And safer.
Right. And maybe that wasn't the work at all. Maybe the work was just to go back to your life and living your life and learning from your life rather than trying to learn from courses.
Oh, that's a whole other topic. I'm 42 years old today. Well, actually, I'll be 43 this Thursday. And I am...
Woo! Congratulations.
I'm still looking forward to it. And I think I'm so looking forward to it, Zoe, because who I am now and what I know now. Like, the struggle is real. And I love the struggle, and I love what it is now. I'm grateful for here, and I have no desire to go back and redo it or change it or anything like that. But it's just been 12 intense years of growing up. And I felt like I was a bit delayed in the process. But yeah, it's turning in and being okay with this teacher, myself, directing and instructing, as opposed to whatever story I was telling myself for the last 10 years, and needing to seek external peer group. You're absolutely right in the beginning. I would look around at all my peers and be like, they're so much smarter than me. I'm faking it. Why hasn't anyone seen that I'm just like an imposter in this room? What if I get found out? And that had to pass before I could say, actually, there is a knowing in here that I can tap into. I don't know how I would articulate going about accessing it, but I wonder if it was just those continuous experiences like yourself. I'm going to apply to Countdown as the presenter, and then I'm going to go on this radio station, and we continue to do things that inspire us and learn from them what we like and what we don't want, and then eventually there's a connection that takes place, an internal connection. When you are, because I know you do some form of mentoring. I know you have mentors, but don't you also mentor?
Well, so yes, I have at the moment one mentor outside of my day job, and one mentee outside of my day job, and two within, I would say. But I suppose I probably have like ad hoc mentoring chats with people as well. Like, I'm always happy to share my opinion and my thoughts with people.
I always observed you are happy when you're invited. I've been in and around your office and building, and I got the opportunity to observe and watch, and I was a bit, actually, I remember there was 3 of us in a room one day, and I was a bit schooled by you, because I tend to be the one who would charge right in there with my opinion off the bat. And I remember there was a poise about you. You were a little bit more, when I'm asked, I'm happy to share, of course, and then some. But there was a different way that you approached it than myself back then. And I can see that it's continued. My question, though, is mentees, when they come to you in the space of lack and ambition and the stuff that we're talking about today, like, what's your counsel to them? You want them to experience it, but you also want to maybe hack some of the system for them. Like, where do you start with them, and what is your advice?
Well, so I try very hard, and I don't always achieve it. So now we've got our other first topic we put aside. It's come back, which is accidentally forcing your own agenda on other people, right? So funny how you always come full circle, right? So I always try very hard to start at where are they and why are they coming to talk to me as a mentor? Because it's too easy to make assumptions, and either like these people want what I want, or these people they have ambition and I must help them with that ambition or push them towards that ambition, or I'm super smart because I just did a podcast with Shannon and I know that ambition is just lack, right? So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to quash their ambition. I'm going to try and teach them that it's all coming from lack and they should go and do some meditation. I actually try, and I will have limited success like all human beings at doing this, but I try and start from what do they want? What do they want to get out of a session? And actually, if my mentee that I have outside of SoftWire, she is like the perfect mentee, because every time we have a chat and I say, you're amazing, you're doing great. And she says, oh my God, but what about this? And what about this? And I don't know how to do this. And I go, okay, all right, well, we can talk through that. Then after a few chats, we got to our new pattern, which we repeat every time. And she goes, I don't know how to do this. And I go, well, remember, that's because it's new. Remember 4 months ago when you didn't know how to do what you were doing then? And what do you think about that? Oh, well, that's really easy now. I'm like, yeah, okay. So what can we deduce from that about your current challenge? And, you know, she's just super self-motivated and takes on the challenges. And yeah, and so it feels very successful, but the success is down to her, not down to me. You know, and that's all the best mentoring relationships. It is the mentee who makes the success.
That could also be another paradox. But I do hear the spirit with which you share that. I'm curious if you have any final thoughts on lack and ambition and motivation and inspiration before we wrap up. Any last things that you just want to summarize maybe or leave as takeaways?
Yeah, so I think, like, if I were to have like a few general tips, you said something about what should you do? Like, I think following your inspiration is something that you really can't go wrong. Like, if you are aware enough of your inspiration to be able to decide whether to follow it or not, I think you rarely go wrong with that. I also think in the absence of knowing what your inspiration is, doing something new is usually not a bad thing either, because the world is so vast and we as people are so vast within ourselves, and we get so used to putting ourselves in tiny boxes. I think doing something new. And third is, like, be kind to yourself. Like, everything we've just said, everything is struggle, everything is challenge. It's either a struggle because you're literally having to exert yourself so much to make everything happen, right? Or it's a challenge because you feel you can't get any purchase or traction on what it is you want to do, and you feel unfulfilled, or possibly both at the same time. But that is the learning. And so actually, whatever it is that is your challenge right now, in whatever form that is showing up, that is your challenge right now, and that is your learning right now. And welcome to life. That's it. That's all I have.
It is. I love that. Whatever your challenge is right now, welcome to your life. It's an important part of it. It's the friction that allows us to leave the cocoon. And we don't get to be a butterfly any other way. Zoe, thank you so much for today. I love this conversation so much. I am going to invite you back for at least another conversation, probably too. When my Unstuck is arriving on Thursday. So I'll have a...
Oh, yes, cool.
Pardon?
I misheard what you said, and I was like, "Oh, she's got an unsound."
Oh no, the book.
That sounds like. Yeah, I think I worked it out.
So I'll probably circle back with you once I've had a time to go through that, because no doubt there'll be synergies in there for the next conversation.
Cool.
So, final question: what film can we see you in? What TV show can we see you in right now at the moment?
Well, so right in the very immediate short term, in terms of general release, you will see pop up very briefly in a John Lewis advert.
Oh my! So when you say in the immediate, oh my God, the Christmas one?
So I don't think so. I've tried to have so as an actor, you don't find out any of the details. So I've tried to find out what I can, but I think possibly it's not the Christmas one, or maybe it is. I don't know. But I will be on a Zoom call like we're on right now, and you will see me pop up as a face on a Zoom call. So yeah, so if you watch very closely, the last commercial that I did, I said shush. I was on for like literally 5 seconds, but people did spot me. So it's our facial recognition is so good. And then I just finished 2 super low budget independent feature films. So they will not be in cinemas because you need to have quite a significant film to get it into cinemas, but they will be available online, possibly in 2021 rather than 2020. So yeah, and my website is zoefcunningham.com, and I have a mailing list. So if you want to find out about me, that's the best place to go.
Wonderful. Zoe, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Shannon. It's been loads of fun.
The Work That Matters podcast, it's brought to you by ShannonEastman.com.